yeah. I'll tell you what, the best French onion soup you'll ever taste in your life is the recipe you're about to take a look at. This is really good. Do me a favor though, if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe, click the bell so you get notified of when I post videos. If you enjoy this video while you're watching it, please click that thumbs up. I do appreciate the help on that. And folks, thank you very much for watching. Take a look at S.A.Trotter.com. That's where you get my recipes. Let's get into this. Well, howdy. Welcome to my kitchen. This is Texas Cooking Today. I'm Stuart, and today we're going to be preparing some French onion soup. This is a dish that I grew up with, actually. Mom made this on a regular basis, and I guess I kind of got lucky. She went to France with my father after the Second World War, and my dad was in the military. He was in the Air Force. He was stationed over there, and while they lived there, they made friends in France, and Mom learned French cooking, and she had an Italian maid. She learned Italian cooking also, the Bolognese style. And so anyway, I've got just this whole repertoire of recipes that I pull from and techniques that I pull from. But this recipe is special. This is a time-honored recipe. It goes back hundreds of years, and I'm looking forward to showing it to you. So come on over. We're going to take a look at the ingredients, and we're going to get busy making this delicious soup. Come on over. So I have a wonderful variety of ingredients here. First of all, wonderful onions. Onions, these guys right here, this is what makes French onion soup absolutely special. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of different people that have a lot of different viewpoints as to the kind of onion you should use. A lot of people will say use a yellow onion, but I'll tell you what, Mom learned to use red onions, and I can tell you from having done it both ways, I really like the flavor that the red onions give to a French onion soup. It's still just as sweet, but you get just a much better oniony flavor. Okay, so we got onions here. We have some Swiss cheese, garlic, a little flour, butter, some thyme. I have paprika. Right here we have some beef broth and also a little bit of red wine. I'm using a Merlot for this one. And over here on the side, I've got a French baguette that we will use. I'll cut those up, toast them to make croûtes to put on the top of the soup. Now this soup takes a little bit of time to make, and it's all in cooking the onions. After the onions are cooked, things go pretty smoothly, but that takes some time. We got to cut all of those up, get them in some pans, and get them cooked down. And you're going to be surprised how much those cook down. All right, I'm only going to cut one onion for you just to show you how I do mine. Now when you're going to be cutting onions, if you've never done a whole lot of onions, let me explain real quick. More juice will come out of the root end than will come out of the stem end. And it's just the way the onions are shaped. When that juice comes out, that's what mixes with the oxygen in the air, creates a sulfuric fume, and suddenly you're crying. So let's cut the end that you get less of that from. Even though it's a larger end, you get less juice from it. And then when it comes to taking care of this outer layer, it gets thin right here, which tells me it's going to be kind of dry and not so good in that area. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that layer. And I do this. I would rather sacrifice a little bit of good than to get bad in my soup, okay? And that's just that. So when there's a dry spot on an outer layer, that's the last layer that I take out, okay? When I do this, I usually do this part to all of the onions first and just line them up. And then I'll split them in half, lay them flat, split them in half again. And all we have to do is cut some nice 3/8 to 1/2 inch slices. Okay, and it doesn't have to be anything pretty. Now let me let you know why. That's because these things are going to cook down to nothing, all right? We're going to cook them from this nice, beautiful, firm shapes that are absolutely beautiful down to something that's hardly recognizable as an onion at all. And that's going to be a caramelizing process. So we'll do that, and make some delicious soup. I usually just go ahead and take them and put them directly in my pot. There we go. And there you have it. That's what I'm going to do to all of these. So go ahead and get yours ready, and we'll meet on the other side. Now, I'll say this. 8 pounds of onions, I usually have to use 2 big pots in order to cook those down. But I will end up just using this pot by itself by the time I'm finished. And you'll see what I mean. All right, now after a great deal of work, I've gotten those onions all cut up. Now, you might be thinking that is a whole lot of onions. And you're right, it is. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a clip towards the end of this video that is about the ingredients quantity, so it'll all be there. But so you'll know right now, this is 8 pounds of red onions. So I've got 4 pounds in each of these pots. All right, now the scary thing is this is going to cook down to only about a total of, let me think here. You're gonna have about 2 to 2.5 inches worth of onions in the bottom of that pot when it's all said and done. So as I'm cooking these, I'm looking not to steam these. I'm looking to get some caramelization and to get the moisture out of them. So I'm doing this without a lid. And a little later on, the lids will be important, or one lid will, when I'm down to just using this one pot and we're simmering it. But until then, there's a lot of cooking to be done. So understand this is a slow process, and it isn't that the soup is so slow, it's just that it takes time to sweat your onions down, or not sweat them, but to cook them down to the point that we need them. The state that I need these onions in is going to be barely recognizable to what they are now. I need plenty of oil in there to cover all those little pieces. Stir these things on a regular basis. You want to stir them about every 5 minutes or so. And just keep cooking until they're cooked all the way down. And you'll see what it looks like in just a little bit. All right, I wanted to show you this. I'm about halfway through cooking the onions. Hard to believe, huh? And when I open up the bottom, you'll notice there's some caramelization going on down there. That dark color, that's what we want. I'm going to break some of that loose, build it up on my spoon, and I'll knock it off into the pan, like so. And later on, that's just going to dissolve into the whole soup. That was my timer telling me I need to stir this. I'm stirring it about every 3 minutes at this point. We're still cooking over medium-high. So you see how much is in this one right here, and that's almost 2 inches, all right? And what I'm going to end up with is going to be about this deep of onion, but just in one pot once I combine the two. They'll cook down that much more. I have cooked these down, look at this, very, very well. And they're hardly recognizable as onions anymore, just barely. And that's the state we want them in. So what I'm going to do is, you see all of this built up sugar in the bottom. I'm scraping that off with that spoon, see there? Collecting it, you could say. That right there is pure flavor. And if a little bit of it cools down, and I want you to try this, I want you to taste a little bit of that. You'll be surprised. It's very oniony and extremely sweet. It's delicious. You'll be surprised. There you go. That's that timer telling me I need to do this. All right, so I'm going to transfer this to my other pot. Now, in the event that you're concerned about any of what's left behind, you could use a little bit of your beef broth to wash some of that loose. Once it's time to put everything in, pour it in. But don't pour it in sooner than taking care of the butter and the flour, okay? Let's do that. And as I mentioned before, we were going to cook this down to about 2.5 inches worth of onions there. And I think that we are there. We're very close. So there is a little more cooking to do on this, and that is getting some butter and flour cooked into it. We'll take care of that right now. And essentially, if I was doing this in an open pan, I would be making a roux. And the butter is just going to make it a little richer and a little more full body. The flour, of course, is going to act to give the soup a little body. It's not going to really thicken it like a gravy. It just makes it a little bit, how should I say, a little bit better on the mouth feel. It coats the tongue better this way. I want to let this cook a little bit more, just as it's been doing. I want to continue stirring about every 2 to 3 minutes. And I have been stirring frequently on this. Every 3 minutes this has gotten stirred during this caramelizing process. This right here, as I said, acts as a thickener to give it body. It has been about 10 minutes of cooking this down. I have a little bit of buildup in the bottom. Again, expected. And it has become quite thick and rather mushy, and that's just right, believe it or not. What we're looking at is pretty much just right. So everything in the pot. Next goes in beef broth, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, now what I just put in there is 6 cups of beef broth. I'm going to put in 1 cup of water for what boils out in a little bit, and in addition I have a cup of wine that we're going to put in there. There's that cup of red wine. That's a Merlot. Okay, now I like to use a Merlot in this, although a lot of people prefer to use a Cabernet Sauvignon. I think the Cabernet is a little bit heavy, all right, and that's the only reason I don't like to use it, is because you have a dish here that's already immensely rich. It's just so full of flavor and character, it's unbelievable. And what you see now, that's kind of caramely color, well, that's going to change. We're going to simmer this now, and we're going to see a change in the color and everything about this. Now, I want to say something. I mentioned earlier, all of this is good, and it is. It's just pure sugar and flavor mixed together. It's concentrated flavor. Every bit of it needs to be in there. And I want to say this, don't worry, it's going to dissolve. It'll become a part of that soup. Now I'm down to my spices and flavorings. My bundle of thyme I can just throw in there, and I'll retrieve it after things taste right. I'll taste it, and when I get a good thyme flavor in my soup, that's when I pull the bundle out. The garlic, all I'm going to do here is simply crush it and then throw it in there. This is about to get an hour boil, and so that 1 hour boiling time, this garlic is going to cook down to an almost unrecognizable thing. Now we got salt and paprika I'm going to put in there. Okay, time for a little salt, and I'm not going to put a lot in there, but I want to get about 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon in, just to start with. My paprika, I'm going to want roughly a tablespoon, roughly. Boom, there we go. Look at that, color is already improving, folks. Just give it time, relax. After this is boiled, and it needs to simmer for a while. This needs to simmer for an hour, so I'm going to bring it to a boil, and as soon as it breaks a boil, I'll reduce it to a low temperature, cover it, and simmer it that way for an hour. Okay, and here's that extra cup of water. So right now we have a total of just slightly more than a gallon of soup. And ladies and gentlemen, it's amazing. Amazing how much those onions cook down, isn't it? All right, it looks like my pot has come to a boil. So I'm just going to cover it. I'm going to reduce it to a low. And I want to let that thing simmer for 1 hour. So I'm going to set my timer, 1 hour. Here we go. Alrighty, that pot is now on its simmer, and so am I. I'm going to sit here and enjoy some of that wine that I used for that soup. Oh, it's good. And remember, later on when you're tasting the soup, and that'll be about 20 minutes in, you need to taste it and see if you should add salt. Do you need to pull that thyme out? And do you need to add a little more wine? So let your palate decide that for you. Now, as far as what we do to top French onion soup, we top it with what's called a croûte. That's where we go out and we take a French baguette and cut it into about 1/2 inch thick slices, toast those. You can toast them in a skillet with olive oil or just do it in a toaster oven. That's what I'm going to do. Toast them up and those become a topping for the soup. We put those on the soup and top that with a little bit of cheese and melt it under a broiler. So if you're going to do that, make sure that the item that you're going to be making your soup in is oven proof, all right? So you want something that's a nice little soup crock, works in the oven. That's what this is for. And so we're going to be doing it that way. That's all there is to it. Right now it's just a matter of it needs to simmer. Don't forget to taste it in about 20 minutes. Make adjustments. You're done. Well, this has been simmering now for 1 hour. I did add an additional 1 cup of water to it. And that was only because I don't want it too concentrated or too strong. This soup has a lot of flavor. It's very intense and it is quite delicious. So that having been said, I would like to mention I removed the thyme at about, I think it was 20 minutes in that I took it out of this. And then let it sit and finish simmering. Now we have a beautiful soup. Let's get this dished up and in the broiler. Now that has been an interesting process, hasn't it? I mean, what you have to do to get all these onions cooked down is just, it's unbelievable. It's also unbelievable how much they cook down, isn't it? I'll tell you what, let me tell you the whole recipe here. We started with 8 pounds of onions, all right? 8 pounds of red onions and 6 cups of beef broth, 1 to 2 cups of red wine, 5 tablespoons of butter to 1/4 cup of flour. On your paprika, you want 1 tablespoon of paprika. A nice bundle of thyme if you can get it. Otherwise, use about 1 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of dried thyme, okay? And that'll work fine also. The garlic, use 4 to 5 cloves of garlic. And as far as your cheese and your bread, that's just to your liking. Use larger croûtes or smaller croûtes, however you want, and as much cheese as you would like to melt over the top. And that just makes it wonderful as far as I'm concerned. So let's take a look at the finished product, get one assembled up, and ready to enjoy. So I have a soup here that's really come out quite well. The flavor of it is fantastic. I was tasting it just a minute ago and really totally enjoyed that flavor. I might make a little bit of a mess getting this into the bowls, but hey, you know, that's the thing. If it runs down the side a little bit and gives you a little bit of color on the outside of that bowl, folks, that's just part of the look of the soup. Alright, that's where I want it, right there. Alright, look at that. Now, let's go ahead and get our toppings on this. There we go. And I'm going to say this right now. I don't think you can put too much cheese on top of French onion soup. I don't think that's possible. I don't think I've ever put too much cheese on mine. And It is just that contrasting sharp flavor that contrasts against the sweetness of the soup, and it really sets it off. It just makes it perfect. So that Swiss cheese, absolutely, totally, very integral to this dish. I'm talking like Porky Pig. All right. There we go. I'll get this right over there in my oven. Have the broiler on already. Well, now, I have been waiting for this. Oh boy, watch out though. Mighty hot when you first get these out of the oven. I tell you what, but the flavors, That's that flavor I grew up with. That deliciousness, that recipe from France that you just can't go wrong with. That's good. Oh boy, I can't wait to finish this. Folks, please enjoy your soup. Also, if you would, click the like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe and click that bell if you haven't done so. I really appreciate that. It helps me out a lot. And if you would, drop me a comment. I do read those. I respond to a lot of them. So drop me a comment and I appreciate that. So if you would also take a look there in the comments box down below there, excuse me, not comments, but my description box right underneath this video. And that's where you're going to find some links to S.A.Trotter.com. Also a link to Wildgrain, not Wisio, well, also Wisio. There's a link to my Patreon there. Wildgrain produces a wonderful bread. It's a sourdough bread, several different kinds. Also pastries and pastas, all artisan stuff, and it is sent to your door on your schedule. Okay, so take a look at that. It's really super cool. Also, there is another link there, and that is to Chef's Temp thermometers. Now, I'm not sponsored by these folks, but I do get a commission if you click those links and you like the product and end up getting it. So that Chef's Temp thermometer, it's the one I've been using lately, and I'll tell you what, folks, it's a good one. Give it a try. Good price, good thermometer. Thanks for watching. Please enjoy your soup and have a good day. Bye-bye.